P. Daniel and his wife Clara had been hearing strange voices recently. First, it was the same melody their late son Joshua would play in his guitar, a sound that had once filled the silent spaces of their lives. Now, it filled them with a cold, creeping dread. But in the home, it became something else. It began to warp, stretching and bending into something new. Clara was the first to break under its weight. Daniel would dismiss it, his voice tight with a fear he refused to acknowledge. It's the pipes, the wind through the window frames. Then, one night, as it rains, the whisper formed the word. They were in their bedroom, the grand four-poster bed, feeling like a raft on a dark ocean. The sound started, as it always did, but then it fractured, sharpened, and coalesced into a single guttural syllable that was both a question and an accusation. Why? The word hung in the air, wet and heavy. Clara let out a strangled cry and buried her face in her hands. Daniel froze, his Bible slipping from his grasp and thudding onto the plush carpet. The voice wasn't in the walls anymore. It was in the room with them. It was between them. The life they had worked so hard to keep was now guttering. And in the dying light, a different kind of presence was stepping out of the shadows to take its place, and it was just beginning to speak. The city of Lagos had seen many preachers, but none like Pastor Daniel Olaoye, popularly known as P. Daniel, and his wife Clara. They were young, beautiful, and magnetic. His voice filled the airwaves every Sunday morning, his sermons echoing through car radios and market stalls. Her smile, elegant, precise, always camera ready, became the brand of the ministry. Together, they built Fire Dominion Assembly, a church that promised transformation, success, and the touch of divine power. But behind the pulpit and the lights, there was a house that never quite slept. Daniel wasn't born rich. He had grown up in Mushin, fighting hunger and mockery. When his ministry began to grow, it wasn't just about God anymore. It was about proving that the boy from Mushin could become a man that even the rich bowed to. Clara, on the other hand, had always been drawn to elegance. She loved Daniel deeply, but she loved the life his success created even more. The tailored suits, the chauffeurs, the invitations to speak in London, New York, and Accra. Together, they were unstoppable. In their 5th year, Fire Dominion had 3 branches, thousands of members, and a media department running like a television station. But what people didn't see was the private struggle, the child who never spoke, never smiled, and never called them daddy and mommy. His name was Joshua. He was 7 years old and had been diagnosed with autism when he was 3. Daniel fasted, prayed, and laid hands on him for years, but Joshua remained quiet, detached, trapped in a world his parents couldn't reach. To the congregation, he was special, but to Daniel, it was a reminder that not everything about life was perfect. And Daniel hated imperfections. At first, it was subtle. Daniel started skipping morning prayers. His sermons became more motivational than spiritual. His words, once drenched in sincerity, became performances. He could sense the admiration of the crowd and drank it in like fine wine. Clara noticed the change, but she didn't speak. She was enjoying the spotlight, the perfume endorsements, the women's conferences, the social media fame. Sometimes she would scroll through her Instagram late at night, smiling at comments that called her Mama Fire, Queen of Grace, the Anointed One. But the truth, they were both burning out. It started with Daniel losing sleep. He would wake up in the middle of the night, staring into the dark, thinking about the next big project, the next conference, and the next breakthrough. He told himself it was for the ministry, but deep down, he feared being irrelevant. One night, he whispered to Clara, "What if it all goes away? What if people stop coming?" Clara turned to him, her face half lit by the bedside lamp. "Then we fight to stay on top," she said. It sounded brave, but that night, Daniel couldn't shake off a deep crawling feeling in his chest, a quiet fear that maybe the fire that once burned inside him wasn't divine anymore. Rumors began to spread. Attendance dropped a little. A new, younger preacher emerged online, gaining popularity with fresh, viral messages. Daniel started comparing himself. He began to envy what he once used to mentor. That was when Femi, an old friend from Bible school, reappeared. Femi was not in ministry anymore. He claimed to work with special advisors who help pastors maintain influence. He was smooth talking, persuasive, and worldly. Clara met him once at a dinner and was instantly intrigued. He seemed to understand their struggles, the endless expectations, the financial pressure, the exhaustions. You don't have to lose everything just because people think your fire is going out. Femi said one night over drinks, "There are systems that can sustain your visibility." "What kind of systems?" Daniel asked. Femi smiled. "Let us say, people who help men of God stay men of God." Daniel laughed it off, but Clara didn't. Something in her eyes lingered on that line. The next Sunday, Daniel preached a sermon titled "When the Fire Goes Out." He shouted, he wept, he made the crowd cry, but as he dropped the microphone, a strange chill passed through him. It was as though his words bounced off the walls and came back empty. He looked at Clara in the front row, beautiful, composed, smiling, and for a split second, he saw fear. Not fear of God, but fear of losing everything they had built. The applause thundered, cameras flashed, but in that instant, both of them knew something had shifted. They didn't talk about it that night. They just sat in silence, listening to the rain tapping against the glasses, the sound of their sons humming softly to himself in the next room. Neither of them knew that hum would be the last innocent sound they would ever hear in that house. It started with an empty chair. The first Sunday, Daniel noticed it. He brushed it off. Maybe the families are traveled. But then, 2 weeks later, another seat went empty. Then another. Soon, he began to see patches of spaces where people once stood shouting "Amen." The choir still sang like angels. The ushers still smiled, but the energy was different. The applause sounded thinner, the offering baskets lighter. And when the new preacher, Prophet Dimeji, started trending online with miracles and instant wealth testimonies, Daniel felt the sting of invisibility. The board began asking questions. "Papa, should we host a revival? Should we bring guest ministers?" Daniel nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He began scrolling through old YouTube videos of himself, back when his voice thundered with conviction. Now, he felt like a man impersonating his own legacy. At home, Clara sensed the tension. He was quieter, more irritable. He shouted at staff, ignored calls, and sometimes sat in Joshua's room, watching the boy draw meaningless lines in the air. The boy's silence haunted him. Sometimes Daniel wondered, was God punishing him through Joshua? Clara didn't pray as much anymore. She managed the image, the brand, the illusion. Every morning she dressed perfectly, created posts for social media, and gave interviews about the grace that keeps fire dominion shining. But at night, she cried silently beside her husband, afraid to admit that she was losing him to despair. When Femi called again, she didn't tell Daniel. They met in a small restaurant off Admiralty Road. Femi arrived late, wearing a navy blue suit and dark sunglasses even though it was evening. "You look tired," he said. "I'm just fighting to hold things together," she replied. He nodded knowingly. "You are fighting a battle most pastors' wives fight but never win." Daniel is gifted, but gifts fade. What you need is reinforcement. Reinforcement? She repeated. Yes, spiritual support. There are people who specialize in keeping ministers relevant. People who understand spiritual politics. Clara frowned. "Are you talking about witchcraft?" Femi chuckled. "No, I'm talking about balance. Every kingdom, light or dark, understands power. The question is, which side do you let empower you?" He leaned closer. "If you and your husband want to keep your fire, I can arrange a meeting, but you must come willing." They met in a compound off Badagry Expressway, far from the eyes of their congregation. It looked like a retreat center, clean, serene, oddly peaceful. Inside were men and women in white garments, chanting in low tones that sounded like prayers but carried a rhythm too strange to be holy. Their leader called himself Baba Ileri, a small, soft-spoken man with piercing eyes. He greeted them warmly, as though expecting them. "You are not the first," he said, smiling. "Great men of God come here when the fire begins to flicker. We do not destroy light, we only preserve it." Daniel frowned. "Preserve it how?" "With sacrifice," Baba Ileri said calmly. "Everything power demands exchange." Clara's heart tottered. Daniel glanced at her. "What kind of sacrifice?" "Nothing strange," the man said, waving his hand. "A token of honor. You will bring something there, something from your own bloodline, to renew the covenant of visibility." Daniel stood abruptly. "Let's go, Clara." But the man only smiled. "The moment you walked through that gate, your desire was seen. You want to stay on top. You want relevance. God hears prayer, but he also observes motives." His words hit Daniel like thunder. He said nothing, but the silence was louder than denial. They left that night without saying a word to each other. For weeks, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what the man said. Every time she looked at Joshua, she felt an ache, love mixed with dread. One evening, she found Daniel sitting in the study, lights off, staring at his phone. The glow from the screen cast deep shadows upon his eyes. "Are we okay?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "We are sinking, Clara. The church account is nearly empty. Sponsors are pulling back. I am losing invitations. People think I've lost my anointing." She knelt beside him. "Then let's fix this." Maybe that man wasn't lying. Maybe God uses strange paths sometimes. Daniel's eyes snapped to her. "You are suggesting we..." "I am saying we have come too far to lose everything. I can't go back to nothing, Daniel. I can't." The words lingered like smoke in the air. From that night, they stopped fighting the thought. It was as if something inside both of them cracked open. Something that used to say no. That week, Daniel had a dream. He saw Joshua standing at the altar, holding a candle that kept melting faster than it should. Behind the boy was a faceless crowd chanting his name, "Pastor Daniel, Pastor Daniel." But each voice echoed hollow. Then Joshua's candle went out, and everything went black. He woke up drenched in sweat, grasping. Clara was beside him, awake too. I dreamt he was gone, she whispered. Daniel turned to her sharply. Who? Joshua. Neither spoke after that. But in the morning, Daniel called Femi. It was presented like a business deal. Neat, logical, emotionless. The ritual, Femi explained, requires innocence. The kind that can't speak, can't resist, can't comprehend. It's not death in the usual sense. It's transformation. Daniel wanted to shout, to walk away, to throw the man out, but the words innocence that can't speak echoed like a curse. Joshua. He buried his face in his hands. Clara reached for him, her own eyes red. Maybe this is the price, she whispered. The price for staying where God placed us. It was madness, but they both wanted to believe it made sense. The next night, rain fell heavily, drowning the city's noise. In their home, the lights flickered, and the sound of thunder masked Clara's sobs as she held their sleeping child one last time. Daniel couldn't look. He paced the corridor, whispering to himself, it's not death, it's transformation. It's not death, it's transformation. But when he had heard the knife dropped, he knew something holy inside him had died too. They buried Joshua quietly in the backyard, under the mango tree where he used to hum to himself. That morning, Daniel walked into the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. Clara washed her hands 3 times, scrubbing till her skin turned raw. Yet within weeks, money started flowing again. Invitations came back. Fire Dominion became the talk of the city once more. Daniel's sermon had power again, but not the kind that came from heaven. And when he stood at the pulpit, he could swear he sometimes heard a faint hum under the sound of the congregation's cheers, a child's hum. The first time it happened, Daniel thought it was just the wind. He was sitting in his office signing partnership letters. When the sound came, a soft, familiar hum, barely there, but distant. It drifted through the room like memory itself. He froze. Joshua used to make that sound, low, rhythmic, like the gentle tune of a child lost in his own world. But Joshua was gone. Daniel stood, looking around the room. Nothing. The AC wired quietly. The windows were shut. He shook his head, grabbed his Bible, and whispered, "It's just stress." But that night, when he went home, Clara said, "I heard him today." Daniel looked at her, his heart pounding. Heard who? Joshua. It began softly. Objects moved. Toys appeared in strange places. Once, Clara found Joshua's drawing book open on the bed, filled with circles and wavy lines, just as he used to draw. She screamed, dropping it. Daniel rushed in, staring at the pages as though they were alive. "Who put this here?" he shouted at the housekeeper. "Nobody, sir. I swear." They fired her the next morning, but the drawings kept coming back. At night, they would hear humming, sometimes from the backyard, sometimes from inside the walls. Clara started sleeping with lights on. Daniel started avoiding home. Yet, whenever he stepped on stage, the crowd went wild. Power surged through him when he preached, words flowing like fire. Miracles happened again and again, but afterward, he always felt drained, hollow, as if something was taken, not given. Their marriage began to rot. Clara became obsessed with perfumes, buying expensive bottles and spraying the rooms constantly, trying to drown the smell of something she couldn't name. Sometimes she would wake up screaming, clutching her chest. "He's standing there. Daniel, Standing by the door, Daniel would rush over, see nothing, and a heart and hold her shaking body. But deep down, he knew she wasn't lying. He could feel it too. The house felt crowded, alive with whispers that didn't belong. Once, he went out to pray by the mango tree, the one under which they had buried Joshua. The ground was still slightly uneven. As he knelt, a shadow flickered in his peripheral vision. Small, childlike. He turned sharply. Nothing. Then the humming began again. Daniel staggered backward, gasping. His hand trembled as he touched the wet bark of the tree. The hum grew louder, almost melodic now. Then came a whisper, "Daddy." He screamed and fell to his knees. The next Sunday, during service, Daniel blacked out mid-sermon. The media team caught the broadcast before people could see him collapse behind the pulpit, shaking uncontrollably. When he woke, Clara was beside him, her eyes swollen. "They said you fainted," she whispered. "But I saw your face. You were seeing something." He swallowed hard. He was standing beside me. Clara's lip quivered. "Daniel, we can't keep living like this." "I know, but neither of them knew what to do. They couldn't confess. They couldn't undo it. So they built bigger walls, louder music, more distractions. They launched a new branch in Port Harcourt. They bought a new Range Rover. They smiled harder, preached longer, traveled farther. But the hum followed them everywhere. It was around 2:17 a.m. when Clara woke to the sound of the piano playing in the living room, a slow haunting tune, Joshua's tune. She crept down the stairs trembling. The piano lid was open, and the keys were pressing down on their own, soft, deliberate, like invisible fingers. Her breath caught. "Joshua," she whispered. The music stopped. Then from behind her, a faint voice said, "Mommy." She turned and screamed. Daniel ran downstairs, half asleep, and found her curled in a corner, shaking violently, eyes fixed on the piano. He said nothing, but the air was thick, heavy, almost visible. That night, they didn't sleep. By morning, Clara was packing bags. "We can't stay here anymore, Daniel. This house is cursed. Where do you want us to go?" "Anywhere." But Daniel didn't move. He sat by the window, staring out at the mango tree. "He is not haunting the house," he said quietly. "He's haunting us." The ministry began to feel the ripple. Members started whispering. Some said the pastor had lost his mind. Others said the wife had become paranoid. Rumors spread of strange noises in the church, of lights flickering during services, and then the viral video. During the live broadcast, as Daniel stretched his hands towards a woman for healing, the microphone picked up a faint melodic hum, a child's hum, echoing through the hall. The congregation froze. Daniel froze. The broadcast cut abruptly. The next day, social media was wild. Whose voice was that? Was that a ghost? Was it Fire Dominion? What is Fire Dominion hiding? Daniel locked himself in his study, trembling. He smashed his phone, tore at his clothes, and screamed at the ceiling. "What do you want from me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, faintly, the hum returned. Femi showed up again, uninvited. He found Daniel sitting in darkness, eyes sunken, face unshaven. "Pastor," Femi said carefully, "I told you there would be side effects if the ritual wasn't properly sealed." Daniel's head snapped up. "Side effects? You didn't complete the offering. The energy remains attached. It demands attention." Daniel's voice cracked. "What do I do?" Femi smiled slightly. "Another sacrifice." That was when Daniel snapped. He lunged at Femi. grabbed his collar and slammed him against the wall. "You lied to me." Femi only laughed, a cold, uneven sound. "No, Pastor, I gave you what you asked for. Power, wealth. The rest is the cost you choose not to calculate." Daniel threw him out. That night, Clara sat in the corner, whispering prayers she no longer believed in. "God, if you are there, please make it stop." But the humming didn't stop. It grew louder, spreading through the walls, filling every corner. The lights flickered, the chandelier shook, and as Daniel and Clara clung to each other in terror, the house went dark. The storm hit on a Thursday night. Thunder rolled over the city like a war drum. The sky blared with lightning, white and sharp, cutting across the skyline of Lekki like divine wrath. Inside the mansion, Daniel and Clara sat in silence, each drowning in thoughts they no longer dared to share aloud. Clara's face was pale. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her hands trembled whenever she tried to hold a cup. Daniel's eyes were sunken, his lips cracked, his body heavier with exhaustion than sleep could fix. The house had become a graveyard of noise, whispers in the corridor, footsteps in the attic, humming in the night, and through it all, Joshua's face haunted them both. That evening, Daniel went into the backyard. Rain fell hard, pounding the heart until it smelled like iron. He stood before the mango tree, drenched, whispering, "If you are there, please stop. Please." Lightning flashed, and for a split second, he saw him. Joshua, standing by the tree, barefoot, soaked, staring at him, his small head tilted slightly to the side, eyes hollow, lips moving but no words came out, only that that terrible, innocent Daniel fell to his knees, weeping in the mud. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry." But when he looked up again, Joshua was gone. He stumbled inside, shivering, only to find Clara in the living room, screaming at something unseen. "He is here! He is here! Daniel!" she cried. The TV flickered on by itself. A home video began to play. Their old footage. Joshua at 2 years old, laughing as Clara fed him. Daniel's voice behind the camera. "Say daddy, come on, say daddy." The recording glitched, the laughter slowed, warped until the boy's voice stranged into a Daniel pulled the plug from the wall, but the screen stayed on. The boy on the screen looked straight at him. Then the video cut to black. Clara lost her mind first. She began talking to Joshua's room, leaving food there, saying goodnight every evening. Sometimes Daniel would wake to find her sitting on the floor, clutching the boy's pillow, whispering lullabies but through tears. The church began to notice. She missed conferences, cancelled interviews. The once graceful Mama Fire now looked haunted, brittle and lost. Daniel tried to keep the illusion alive. He still went to the pulpit, but the sermons were incoherent. Now rants about shadows, guilt, redemption. Congregants started leaving in droves. One Sunday, in the middle of his sermon, Daniel froze, his eyes widening. He pointed towards the front row and shouted, "Take him away!" But there was no one there. He dropped the microphone and walked out. 3 days later, someone leaked a video of Daniel arguing violently with staff members in the church office, shouting about the boy in the walls. It went viral. Fire Dominion pastor losing his mind. Scandal in Lekki ministry. The media came for blood. Journalists camped outside the gates. Sponsors withdrew support. The board demanded an emergency meeting. But Daniel didn't show up. He was at home, sitting at the edge of Joshua's bed, whispering, "I know you are here. Just tell me what you want." And for the first time since the night of the ritual, the ear answered him. in a voice that was neither loud nor soft, but deep like it came from inside his chest. Tell them. That night, the police arrived. Neighbors had reported screams coming from the mansion, like a man being torn apart. Officers kicked open the door and found Daniel kneeling in the living room, covered in mud, staring at the turned-on TV showing static. Clara sat beside him, motionless, clutching Joshua's shoe to her chest. "Sir, are you okay?" one of the officers asked. Daniel looked up, eyes red, voice flat. "He is gone, but he is still here." The officer exchanged glances with his partner. "Who, sir?" Daniel's lips trembled. "My son." They were taken to the station for questioning. At first, Clara said nothing, just stared blankly at the wall. But when the officer mentioned Joshua's name, she broke. She started shaking violently, whispering, "We didn't want to. We didn't want to." The officer leaned forward. "Didn't want to what, ma'am?" Her voice cracked. "Kill him." The room fell silence. The officer blinked. "Excuse me?" Daniel covered his face with both hands. His body trembled. "It was supposed to be a sacrifice," he said, barely audible. "They told us it wasn't death. They said it was transformation." He began to weep uncontrollably. "I thought I was doing it to save the ministry, to keep the fire, but it was all a lie." The officers exchanged a horrified glance. One reached for the recorder on the table and turned it on. "Sir, you are confessing that you and your wife murdered your son?" Daniel nodded slowly, tears streaming down. "Yes." Clara screamed. "He was my baby. He was my baby." She lunged at Daniel, beating his chest, crying, "You said it was God's will. You said it was the only way." The officers restrained her as Daniel collapsed to the floor, sobbing like a broken man. At dawn, a police van arrived at the mansion. Officers spread out across the compound, guided by Daniel's trembling finger pointing towards the mango tree. Rain had softened the earth, making it easy to dig. The press gathered outside the gate, flashing cameras through the bars. When the shovel hit something soft, one of the officers froze. The others crowded around. A small decomposed body wrapped in a child's blanket. Gasps, shouts. One officer covered his mouth, eyes wet. The news spread like wildfire. Pastor and wife accused of killing Autistic son for ritual. Fire Dominion scandal rocks nations. By noon, TV stations were replaying the footage of Daniel's sermons beside images of police carrying the small remains away. Daniel and Clara were held separately in cells. For the first time in months, the house was silent. No humming, no whispers, just the weight of truth settling in. In his cell, Daniel sat alone, head bowed, every word of his confession replayed in his mind like echoes in a tongue. He had once said from the pulpit, "When a man loses his fire, he loses his purpose." Now he realized what he had preached. Sometimes, in trying to keep the fire, men burn everything sacred around them. Clara refused to eat. She talked to the wall as if Joshua could hear her. "I kept your toys safe, baby." "I did. Please don't hate me." The police psychiatrist said she might never fully recover. When the press asked Daniel if he had any final words before being moved to prison custody, he said simply, "Tell them, power without light is just darkness wearing a robe." When the story broke, it tore through the internet like wildfire. Every headline screamed the same thing. Pastor and wife arrested for using Autistic son in ritual for wealth. Old sermons resurfaced. Clips of him preaching about purity and sacrifice were mobbed. People gathered outside the station, shouting, crying, recording. The congregation scattered. The mansion was vandalized, and the even church became an empty ruin. a monument of greed and guilt. Months later, in a small prison chapel, Daniel sat alone. The sound of rain echoed on the metal roof. A guard walked by but didn't stop. On the wall behind him was a tiny wooden cross. He stared at it for a long time. Then he closed his eyes and heard the sound again. The laugh. The same soft laugh, Joshua's laugh. He smiled weakly, tears falling down his face. For a second, he could almost see his son running through the rain outside his cell. Free, happy, and whole. And then it was gone. Outside, the signboard of the heaven had been torn down. All that was left were faint letters on cracked paints. Grass had grown through the parking lot. The building stood silent, a giant tomb of what once was holy. A journalist who visited the site months later wrote this in a closing report. They called it the heaven. But sometimes even heavens burn from within. The scariest part isn't what they did, it's how easily they believed it was the only way. Camera pans through the empty sanctuary. Dust floats in the air. A Bible lies open on the pulpit, pages fluttering. The verse reads, "What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul?" The wind slams the Bible shut, silence, darkness. And that is all. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like, share, comment, and of course click the notification button to receive our next story. God bless you.